Hello, acolytes, druids, and general metal maniacs. Once again, we're back with you here at the Druids of Doom. I am Neckwrecker, of course, joined by Franny, and in our third episode here, we are going to be bringing at you some hot reviews, some concerts that we've attended, and our main topic extravaganza this week, Concert Survival Guide 101. So, with that being said, Franny, how the hell are you?
Oh man, I'm not gonna lie. I'm dragging a little bit of ass today. It was a real good concert last night, to say the least. So I'm feeling it today, but that's a good sign because it means it was a real good show. And why don't I just open up with a concert?
Who did you see? What? Pray tell, what did you do yesterday?
Let's see. Yesterday, I went to go see a little German band. You guys may have heard of them before. I don't know. It's a shot in the dark. A little band called Rammstein. Holy shit on a shingle. Jesus H. This show was unreal. I cannot believe it. It was 3 years in the making. We've had these tickets for 3 goddamn years, and we finally get to go. And boy, oh boy, was it worth the wait.
Boy, oh boy.
Jesus H, man.
Well, what was the stage show like? I mean, I hear that they're quite the spectacle. We talked a little bit about that. I've never seen them. Was it a massive ensemble? Did they have good effects? How was the stage show?
So, I'll first off, I'll say something about the opener. They had like a pianist duo.
A pianist? What? Don't call me. How dare you call me that?
But they had a pianist duo opening for them, and which was like, I was not expecting that, but in a weird sense, in like a weird sense, it's very Rammstein of them to do something like that. But they were playing some like piano covers of like Rammstein songs, but then also some other things. They were doing some pretty creative things. They were like, one person was actually like playing the keys while another one was like strumming the strings of the piano, like, you know, on the inside of it. It was pretty wild. But just first going into the stadium, like you see all of this massive equipment, like everywhere, and you're just looking at this and you're like, okay, this shit is gonna be nuts. I mean, there's like big like flame towers like in the middle of like the arena. Basically there's like these big weird round circle things that look like old school microphones like everywhere, but it was nuts.
Well, I think what about the pyrotechnics? Like, I've always heard that to go to one of their shows means you're going to see a lot of fire.
I'm pretty sure I have third-degree burns all over my body. There was so much fucking fire yesterday. It was un-goddamn real. The local potato farmer and I went down into the pits. We snuck down into like the ground floor, and we battled our way up to the stage as close as we could. We were probably like, if you're looking at like the whole distance from the stage to where we were, it was like quarter distance. Like we pushed up real close, and the fucking heat, not just from the pits, but like the heat from the fire effects was something unreal. I couldn't believe it. I don't think I've ever seen so much fire in my entire life in a show, especially in an inside venue like that.
Yeah, shades of Great White.
Oh my God, I could not believe it. There was so much fire, so much heat, so much Till Lindemann. It was fantastic. Like the one song where the keyboardist goes into the cauldron and Till's like has a flamethrower like shooting like these big ass balls of fire under the cauldron, like basically cooking the keyboardist alive, in essence, was something truly to behold.
Yeah, I saw the only band I've really seen that use pyro to a super huge degree was Lamb of God. Are probably the only band that comes to mind for me. And yeah, when you don't know that a band is going to do something like that, it catches you so off guard and just like kicks in this primal side of you that recognizes, oh, this is dangerous on some sort of like instinctual level. But I'm sure you were not surprised by the amount of fire going into that show, because that's one of their calling cards, from what I understand.
It was okay. So I knew there was going to be a lot of fire. But the sheer amount of fire that there was and how hot said fire was, like that.
It's gotta be hard to be on stage for that. They must be sweating their balls off.
Oh, they have to. And like they're, those guys are wearing like full get-ups and everything. It's not like they're coming out in sleeveless t-shirts and stuff like that. Like they have like the, full on like waistcoat type looking things, it looks like. And I'm just like, man, I don't know how you guys do that. Plus they got face paint and everything like that. And
last night, I think it deserves to be mentioned that we were having tornado warnings in the middle of that show. So you're at US Bank Stadium, which is half open viewing through the glass ceiling. That must have been a really epic sort of soundscape, landscape while you're watching a band do all that.
Unfortunately, we had no idea that was going on because they where the big glass side is to the stadium. They had that covered up with like tarp or something like that. So we had no idea. But now that I know that, man, oh man, I wish they wouldn't have had that there. Yeah, because that would have added to so much. That would have added so much ambiance. It's not even funny.
Well, what else can we say about that? So there was just the pianist. There was I can't resist. The pianist and the main chorus, of course, being Rammstein. Anybody else at that bill?
No, it was literally just the duo, the pianist duo, and then Rammstein. That was it. They did have like 2 encores or whatever, which was fucking rad. But yeah, that was it. It was a relatively small bill. The dueling pianist was actually pretty cool. Like I said, they did some covers and stuff like that, and it was actually they were pretty good. And then Rammstein played a lot of the old classics, Du Hast, Mein Teil, like Mein Herzbrennt and stuff like that. And then they played some of the newer stuff off the new album that just came out this year, I believe. But yeah, it was a really good show all in all around.
Well, the night before, first of all, I would have loved to have been at that show. I had some personal stuff dealing with moving a friend. I had to deal with that. Kind of kept me from that show, but I was really jealous. But I don't feel too jealous because Saturday I was in recovery mode because I got physically fucking assaulted the night before. And I know who the perpetrators were. These subhuman, these subterranean, inhuman bastards. I'm talking about Inhuman Condition. Now, this is a band that you and I have both been high on ever since they came out. Forgive me, guys, if I'm getting this wrong. I want to say 2020. They explode. No one was exploding on the scene during COVID, but I know that they came together around that time. Of course, we got to mention Terry Butler. Other members, Taylor Nordberg, guitarist, Jeremy Kling, super high energy vocalist that I was just taken aback by. This show had just ferocious energy. I should mention that Inhuman Condition opened the show. So that's a really important spot because they were opening for headliner Deicide. And of course, Deicide's a band that needs no introduction. And if you're going to open for a band with that sort of reputation, you need to bring the cheap heat. Inhuman Condition did it in spades. Crowd size. Let's talk about crowd size. It was filled wall to wall with metalheads just asunder, and everyone was in good spirit. And it's one of my preferred shitholes. I guess the Caboose in Minneapolis. We've talked about the Skyway, which is just a disaster of a club. Don't get me started. But the Caboose, on the other hand, it's kind of like the shithole that has found its way into my heart slowly over time. So we're seeing the show at the Shithole Caboose, which I somehow love. Inhuman Condition crushed. They opened the show with great energy. They had hilarious merchandise. I got to mention that right now. So Inhuman Condition had Inhuman Conditioner for your hair. I thought that was the shit. They had a table that you could buy raffle tickets for, a custom, like, hand-painted 70s end table. I'm kind of bumming out because I meant to put at least $5 in there, but I got carried away buying other bullshit. So just in terms of merchandise, I'm talking like a Spaceballs level of offering. So Deicide had like campfire mugs They had grinders for those of you that like to maybe crush up your own tea, we'll say. And in addition to the Inhuman Conditioner, their merch attendant, Deidre Kling, was the wife of the lead singer from Inhuman Condition. And she's an artist herself. So she had these really cool, like, graphic photos that she did. So she's a photographer. And I'm talking like corpses rotting in a municipal building with like people standing around solemn. Just these images that got under my skin. So I went there for the death metal. I walked out of there with some art prints, and I thought that was pretty rad.
Hell yeah.
Kataklysm, they're definitely not playing second fiddle here. They were the second band, and they continued the theme that Inhuman Condition started with, which was ferocious fucking energy. It should be mentioned, Inhuman Condition did something I've never seen at the Caboose. So the Caboose, as you know, is split by a deadly fucking peril. It's like a 1 foot by 1 foot pillar of steel, and it's in the middle of the goddamn floor. So most people mosh to the right of said pillar. Well, that wasn't good enough for old Jeremy Kling, lead vocalist, who you would just gush over this guy. Talk about just an ancient pagan living in modern times. Dude's just banging out so hard. He's calling for everyone in the crowd to circle the whole venue. And someone literally said from the audience, like, dude, there's a pillar. Like, this is dangerous. And he just like, he's looking out at us like, I'm not impressed. Well, that turned out to be like a war call. And the whole crowd, the whole floor moshed from end to end. That pillar be damned. Kataklysm came out next. They kept up that same tempo. Are you familiar with, like, I don't know, have you dabbled in the old Canadian Kataklysm?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You turned me on to those guys, and yeah, they fucking are brutal warlords, and they just fucking crush so hard. I really like them. Ever since you turned me on to them, I started delving pretty deep into their discography, and I was super goddamn bummed out that I couldn't go to that show because I wanted to see Inhuman Condition and Kataklysm equally.
So definitely the whole thing was a big headbanging affair. Kataklysm, they're just like stomp a hole in your head death metal. Mid-tempo, they keep everything in the pocket, and as a nod to fans, this show had a lot of fan service, whether it was the merchandise, and Kataklysm and Deicide both played specific albums that their fan base has kind of, loved for a number of years. So Kataklysm played Serenity and Fire in its entirety, and Deicide played Legion, which is one of the more infamous death metal albums from the Tampa Bay scene. And on to Deicide, fantastic show. They just blistered the audience from start to finish, and I was pretty much, as will happen to me, blown out by the time they were on. Like, physically, I was blown out. And I didn't mosh or really anything. I just headbanged like hell on that front rail. And Deicide came out. I basically took a breather. I let all the more inebriated, brave, or young people around me thrash out while I kind of took a distant. It was, that the heat was too much. I could not stand in the kitchen when Deicide took the stage. How about that?
I hear you, man. I hear you.
The funniest thing, too, I just got to throw this out there. Sometimes, I can be prone to deify musicians and artists and performers or just people who do things I respect. Not to say that I look at them like they're, well, I guess I am. But the word deify means looking at them like they're more than human. Mm-hmm. I don't mean to do that, but sometimes I stargaze within heavy metal, and Terry Butler, dude, he's a seminal fucking name within death metal history. And I look over at a certain point, I'm standing there with my good buddy, True Sagan Elite, Gordo Sagan, and we look over and Terry Butler, he's at the end of the show just sitting at his merch table. He's like a grandpa, dude. He's like 60 and he's sitting there and he's like just in the most easy, mellow, like Eagles fan listening way, nodding his head to Deicide, barely moving, but just content. And he's probably texting like his granddaughter. And the gravity of the road just hits me. Like, here this dude is. He's still grinding. He's having a good time, but he's also, I'll go sit in this corner. I'm not going to worry about thrashing out right now. I'm fucking been doing this for 40 years, so let me sit here and eat a pizza. So all I can say is Inhuman Condition, I love you. I'm definitely going to tag them on this episode. I hope they listen to this. I can't wait to catch them again. Jeremy Kling, you stole this whole show. I'll tell you that right now with your energy, giving lead vocals. From what I understand, I'm going to feel bad if I get this wrong, but from what I understand, he's the drummer from The Absence, which is like a fantastic melodic death metal band. So something about him being a drummer, he just brought energy and crowd interaction that most lead singers don't do, and I always want more of.
Yeah, you were saying that what was his name? Jeremy Klinger? The lead
Jeremy
singer?
Kling.
Jeremy Kling. You were saying that he brought the same type of energy from another band that we saw a while back. I Am Texas Death
Absolutely.
Metal, and that man, like if you're putting him on the same level of this guy, at least I can kind of get an idea of where you're coming from, because that lead singer from I Am, holy balls, his energy was just infectious, and it just made you want to thrash out and headbang harder and harder with every single song they played. And it was so awesome to see that kind of energy, and just like his gesticulation and his like faces and stuff that he made
Exactly.
while doing his performance was, in my opinion, like a big reason why I got into them so much, is because, like I said, his energy was infectious. It was just, it was a sight to behold. Like it really was.
I like when a lead singer feels like they're leading a tribe. And when a lead singer, so long as the music suits that sort of atmosphere, like I totally appreciate if it's an atmospheric black metal band, someone like Wolves in the Throne Room. They might not want to interact with the fans in that overt way. But otherwise, a band that plays death metal, thrash metal, even power metal, I love a vocalist that's going to get out in front of the music, bring you into the coven, make you part of their druidic order. And those two boys both did that. So all in all, I wish I could have been at Rammstein. I've always gotten a big thrill out of their whole ambiance and aesthetic and the way they approach music. But needless to say, I rocked the fuck out Friday myself. Death metal is so strong. I can't get over it. More tours to come. The only missed opportunity for me is, well, I guess I'm talking about two. Rammstein was one. And Carpenter Brute. I just was too blown out to see them, and I'm bummed out. I hope I get to catch them again. You know, I love dark synthwave. But that was my Friday. That was your Saturday. Mm-hmm. So we've always got shows in the docket. I am ready, if you are, Franny, to move on to our extravaganza. We've both been going to shows for a number of years. I've been seeing heavy metal shows now for about 20 years, so I'm not a silverback. I'm not acting like I'm the shit. There are plenty of metalheads that have been around 20 years longer than me. But I also know that I've been a dedicated concert goer. I know you are a dedicated concert goer. And there are some things that only experience can provide the wisdom on. And I would say this is one of those things. So today, the Druids of Doom are here to give you just a well-rounded education into surviving concerts, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so without further ado, Franny, let's serve up the young acolytes a little wisdom around concerts.
I think first up on the survival guide to concert going is garb and dressing accordingly, okay? You got to know the season, obviously, when you're going, because as Minnesotans, we are a hardy bunch, okay? We are born of the North. We are not adverse to extreme cold and weather. That also means when you want to go to a concert in the middle of fucking winter, that involves standing outside, freezing your version of genitalia off. So you got to plan for that kind of stuff.
Death to slow doors. Goddamn, death to slow doors. Well, and with garb, you've got the functional side. Yeah, you got to be able to handle inclement weather. This is adulting 101. But I'm talking about a specific angle that I want to know how you handle this. And that's t-shirt selection. And there's a little game, there's a little dance, if you will, prior to a show. If you decide to wear a band shirt, like sometimes I just rock my vest and a fucking muscle shirt because I'm just got to have that vest on. But if I do wear a band shirt, there's an age-old debate. Can you wear the band you're seeing? Can you wear their shirt to their show?
This is a fantastic discussion. This really is. And I am of the camp that you don't wear a shirt of the band that you're going to see. I am of that camp. you go ahead and buy a shirt from their merch booth or whatever. But I personally do not wear the band tee of which I am seeing currently. I don't know what it is about it. I get a little superstitious about it, and I just don't do it. I know some people do, and that's fine.
Too on the nose for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little too on the nose. And our local potato farmer actually, after he bought a Rammstein shirt from last night, in the middle of the concourse, just rips his shirt off and then puts his Rammstein shirt on. And I'm just like, what are you doing? You can't do this. And he's just like, he basically told me to go fuck myself. But that's fine. That's to be expected.
Never trust a potato farmer. That's all I know. Never trust a man who farms potatoes. They will go through bones like butter. Like, no, that's not what we're talking about. Well, I will say I agree with you, but the exception that proves the rule for me are bands who reach godlike status. So like an Iron Maiden, or like, I know maybe not be heavy metal, but Kiss or Metallica. I feel like if a band reaches a certain level of stardom, I don't turn such an ugly eye to it. And I'm just, folks, we're being tongue in cheek. I don't give a fuck if you actually do wear a band shirt at the show. Yeah. I just think you could try harder is all I do think. So what I'll do if I'm seeing Inhuman Condition, like, yeah, I've got an Inhuman Condition shirt, but what's a band that's sort of a nod to Inhuman Condition, but isn't them? So I would wear something like an Undeath shirt or a Tomb Mold shirt or Necrot. I kind of like to do that, like a genre nod is something I'll do a lot when I go to see a show. So on the garb side, yeah, you got the functional side, you got the holy t-shirt selection side, and then this is a whole topic on its own. I don't want to go, and for that reason, I'll keep it just surface level. But when you reach a certain level of nerdiness, you might make yourself a vest. I'm all about that. It's a great way to express yourself. So yeah, that's kind of the obvious shit. Like, think about your garb. What are you going to wear? Another thing I like to think about is, what's the venue like that I'm going to? Because that's going to play a role in cost. Can I park easily? Mm-hmm. And I'm just starting with the easy bullshit that your mom would tell you. We're going to get into the real wisdom here shortly. But beyond that, I'm going to close out the basic shit, and you can say anything you've got around this. But yeah, buzz management, always practice that. Keep water in your car for afterwards, because you're going to need it, whether you maybe had one beer and you just want to rehydrate, or you fucking stomped around in a circle pit and you need water. Protect your ears with some good earplugs, like some high fidelity earplugs, stuff that lets good sound in and blocks those like little hair crushing sounds out. Mm-hmm. And crap, take a shit before you go to a show.
Man, that is paramount. That is absolutely paramount. If you have, like, I think what you were going to say is, if you have any slight rumblings down there, like at all, you make sure to exercise those demons real good before you go to the show. Because as you and I know, we have been to some real shithole venues, and I am talking real shithole venues, and you don't want to be the guy that's got to take a shit on top of another mountain of shit because the toilet's clogged and that's the only place you can go.
Imagine you are that guy. Okay, let's just say you are that guy, and you are now having to confront yourself with taking a shit on a stall that doesn't have a door, that hasn't been flushed after like 48 consecutive visits, and is completely piss-soaked in the floor. So I want to tell you this about the garb. Keep short shoelaces. Keep your shoelaces short, because goddamn Paulie Walnuts taught me anything from The Sopranos. His shoelaces are fucking disgusting, and it's no place is it worse. I would say aside this, short of a truck stop restroom, I would put a metal venue bathroom at the bottom of the Petri dishes inside the CDC. It's a fucking cesspool. Keep your shoelaces short. Now that's all my just regular mom advice bullshit. Before I go into some of the stuff I really want to share with you, like, Franny, do you got any other kind of like the fundamentals that you take care of your body? Anything else along those lines?
Yeah. As you touched on, plugs are a must. You gotta protect your hearing. As somebody that has shit hearing, I need to protect what I have left. So yes, exactly, 100%. I just want to echo that. Bring fucking earplugs. I mean, yeah, you might look like a badass for not having plugs or whatever, or you might feel like a badass for not wearing plugs. But when you're like 40 or 50 years old and you can't hear somebody screaming at you a foot away, you're probably gonna wish that you had worn earplugs. Another thing that you told me, bring a fucking koozie.
Oh, definitely. Bring a koozie.
Bring a can koozie, because there's nothing worse than trying to, alluding to what you said earlier, buzz management. There's nothing worse than managing your buzz with warm beer. Bring a koozie. It's the best thing you've ever told me about when going to a show. And I broke my own advice last night, and I did not bring a koozie because at US Bank Stadium, I thought it was all like plastic cups. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to bring a koozie. Nope, wrong. It was all cans. Everything was cans. And I was just like, motherfuck. So
it's amazing. It's one of those, it's a comfort that you don't realize you miss until you don't have it.
Yeah. And like, it's a total game changer. It is a total game changer.
I appreciate you emphasizing the earplugs. I think the bottom line is put a plug in yourself before you go to a show is what we're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just knowing your venue, like you said, because touching on, parking and stuff like that, but also knowing the venue is going to help you prepare mentally to help you enjoy the show as much as you can. I'm looking at you, Skyway, you piece of shit theater. If I know a show is at that dump, I'm going to be like mentally preparing myself. Okay, yes, I hate this place with a burning passion of 1,000 dying suns, but I just got to get over that because the music from the bands is going to be that much, it's going to be way better than the shithole that I'm in.
Do you think it's possible we'll get to a spot where we talk so much shit about the Skyway that they have a top 5 least wanted, and like we try to go into a show and they're like, get the hell out of here. You've done damage to our good name.
If that happens, then I think we've made it. Even if we didn't actually make it, if we get like barred from the Skyway just from talking so much shit, then I think we've made it in life.
Well, and I suppose that would, if they were making signs, that would require them to have the ability to read and write. And frankly, I don't think any of that staff is able to.
No, I don't think they can pull that off. But that's kind of like the general gee whiz info that I got.
Yeah, the gee whiz shit. I want to move on to some more insider knowledge. Now, this is some of the stuff that I had to accumulate over just a many number of years of trial and tribulation and do better the next time. One of the things that I've always had to think about, and you should be thinking about, young Druids, is consider where you stand at a metal show. Don't be committed to one spot because you need to be fluid with the crowd. Sometimes you have to be in tune to where a mosh pit's going to break out and decide, do I want to be around that? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And a metal show is going to hit you across. A metal show is going to stimulate all of your senses.
Absolutely.
Of course, you got the audio. But olfactory, goddamn, some of the smells. Like, think about who you stand around because you're going to be smelling whatever they've been producing for the last 72 hours if they haven't showered, like I expect they haven't. The other thing is, look, I used to have long hair. Like, it is so fun to have long hair and headbang to a show. That said, you got to be looking like you have to kind of do a headbanging assessment with where you're standing because you could catch the back of someone's skull into your nose if you're not careful, or even, I don't know if this is worse or not, but it has happened to me and it's fucking nasty. But if someone's like greasy, sweat-soaked, just beaver tail of a rat tail of a hair clump is just smacking you and just leaving a trail of oil across your face because they, like I said, 72 hours since our last shower, that does happen. And you have to make a conscious decision that you are either committed to the bit and this is your life now, and you're going to stand there, or you move your dumb ass out of there. So all I'm trying to say here is consider where you stand. Of course, there's other stuff like how does the music sound? Can I see the fucking band the way I want to see them? I can't believe that shit's sometimes at times that can be secondary to me for like who the fuck is around me. Mm-hmm. But I've just gotten so much more introverted as I'm doing a podcast. Oh, I'm an introvert, but it's the truth. Like I've gotten more introverted over the years. Yeah, some people I just got to get some distance from.
Absolutely. When you brought up the hair thing, that reminded me of that Interloper concert with Obscura and that dude that had like the lime green dreads or whatever, and he was thrashing out, and I could see him whipping you like 3 or 4 times, and then after that you're just like, nope, I'm done, and then just went off to the side. I was
Horrible.
like, yeah, it's terrible. Like, nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. And if it's one thing if you're in the pit and you get a face full of hair, okay, you're in the pit, you got to be expected to get hit with literally everything. I'm talking farts, hair, sweat, beer, whatever.
Exactly.
And to touch on the pit, like, sometimes, like you said, sometimes you don't want to be in the pit, you don't want to be around the pit, and that's fine. But you have to realize that the periphery of the pit can be just as bad as being in the pit itself, because you get bodies like literally hurled at you if you're standing on the edge of the pit. So if you don't want to be anywhere near that, then it's best to like really remove yourself from that situation.
Yeah, no, have awareness for fuck's sake. And you know, I think you just, I don't know if I just tampered that memory down to the recesses of my brain, but you're right. I remember that. And you know, there's different, when you talk about dreadlocks, we're going to talk about the archetypes of heavy metal later, but there's like different types of dreadlocks. There are those who, yeah, I've got dreadlocks, but I'm also vegan and I use dry shampoo and I'm into all these. Well, that's not the kind of dreadlocks I was dealing with. That was like a primitivist. That dude was. And he was like, he was a crusty. And those dreadlocks, I remember them lashing me, and every one was like a sweat-stained, like, jump rope. Just, and they wrapped tentacles around me like Cthulhu. I was not pleased. Yeah, that was, like, metal shows hit you on all senses is the whole point. Another thing, you know, if I've shared wisdom with you, you've shared it with me. This is something I used to do, and I fell out of habit with, and I'm finally back, but listening ahead of the show is something that's really cool to do. You know, ideally, you're going to a concert, more than likely you're familiar with at least one of the bands. Else, why? I mean, I guess I go check out shows on a lark, but mostly I know at least one band. Well, the ones that you don't know, and even the ones that you do, like, fuck, listen to them a bit before the show, because it's just going to intensify your attachment to the music. You're going to, in a live setting, be able to pick out spots that trigger your memory and just your past experience with that music. And it makes the show just such a more rich experience, I think. So, yeah, what do you still doing that, listening before? I mean, Rammstein, you know them really well, but listening before a show.
Oh, absolutely. Even like you said, even though I know a lot of the bands that I go see, I still will listen to at least 1 or 2 albums from them the week leading up to a show. But my favorite thing to do when it comes to going to concerts is trying to figure out who the openers are, especially if, like, I don't know them.
Oh, sure.
And listening to their music, because if I like it on an album setting, I'm going to get that much more excited to hear them in a live setting. Prime example is I Am. Like, before that show happened, I had no idea who I Am was. And then I listened to it and I got super jacked. I got super fucking excited for those guys. Same thing with Stormruler. Never heard of them before. I checked some of them out, checked some of their music out on some streaming services, and holy crap, I got so excited for those guys. And then once, like, they were actually playing, I lost my goddamn mind.
Sometimes I just love that. I just love being a Minnesotan. I'm just hearing, holy crap on a cracker. I just love it. I just being jacked. I listen to music before a show to, like, discover what the band's about, but to do exactly what you're talking about, just to also get jacked up with maybe a band who sometimes you have your infatuation or love of a band can be like a season in your life. And maybe you have fallen out of listening habit with them. It's been 4 or 5 years, but you see they're coming to town. Now is the time I'm going to re-immerse myself in their catalog and just say, remember all the things I was doing in my life at the time when I was really into them. I think of a band like Opeth, who was foundational in my journey into heavy metal. From an early point in my interest, I was listening to them. And over the years, I've still followed their career, but with less and less intensity. You know, their sound has shifted a lot. And it just doesn't do the same thing for me as it once did. Mm-hmm. And yet, every time I've had a chance to see them, I go through their catalog, and it's like I fall in love with them all over again. And heading into the show just feels like an affirmation about all these years of albums I've listened to by them and other bands, and just coming back full circle right before seeing them.
Hell yeah. I can't agree with that more. Just like you said, even if it's a band you haven't listened to in a long time, like Rammstein. Before the concert, I hadn't listened to Rammstein for a while, and then I started going back through all of their other albums and stuff like that, and I just got so damn excited, and I realized, I'm like, man, they have had some really good albums over the years, and it just made me that much more excited for the show.
There's always a tricky balance I find with shows too. You have to pick your spots. I mean, you don't have to, but if you don't, you might end up standing in line and wasting your time and not seeing the music you came to see. And what I'm talking about is, and this is so stupid, I'm not going to spend a ton on this, but picking the right time to go buy your fucking merch. There's a lot of considerations with this. It's like, say you take an Uber to a show and you want to get merch. Well, now you're in a position of, I either have to schlep this bullshit around the whole show, which, by the way, hanging onto a record throughout the show, that feels like some Indiana Jones shit. You've got this sacred relic. You're trying to protect that shit. I am not anti-mosh, but that's an exact situation of where the fuck am I standing in the show? Because now that I've got this piece of vinyl on me, I got to make sure a motherfucker doesn't crash into me because this shit cost me $40. So when to buy your merch is a consideration I kind of think about. If I have the ability to run my shit back to the car, I love that. Otherwise, and we've been in this spot, I'll ask a merch person. I always tip anybody that's giving you service. So I always tip them, but I also sometimes will ask, yo, can you hang on to this through the rest of the show for me? And sometimes they'll do that for you.
Absolutely. There's been a numerous amount of times where you and I have done that going to shows for that simple fact that we don't want to huck around an album or a vinyl record or anything like that for the remainder of the show. Patches and stuff like that, or even t-shirts, I can like throw in a belt loop and I'll be fine with that. But like vinyls, stuff like that, I do not want to be hooking that thing around. So yeah, if you can run stuff out to your car, if you have that luxury when you're going to a show, absolutely. If not, hopefully the merch people are cool enough to be like, yeah, we'll hold on to this. Or you can do some advanced recon and be like, do you feel like you're going to have any of these at the end of the show? And sometimes they'll be like, no, they're moving pretty fast right now. Okay, I'll buy it, and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do with it then. Or if they're like, oh yeah, we'll have plenty of them. Okay, sweet, I'll come see you guys at the end of the show.
I feel like that's hey kid, it's a little industry secret. We're always almost out. It's like they always say, yeah, we got about two. Oh, that's so funny. One time I'm 22, 23. The Devil's Blood was in town. Great occult metal band that's just now defunct, unfortunately. And I wanted this record so bad, and I didn't want to miss my opportunity. I'm like, hey, is this almost out? This is the last one, kid. I bought it. I shit you not. I walked by that table 15 minutes later. It's a new copy's out. I'm like, oh, okay. I get it.
You sons of bitches.
I'll just throw this out there, I guess, sort of related to that. Merch people are hilarious. They're awesome. This is not something I always used to do, but as I've gotten older, I enjoy yucking it up with the merch staff because they know how a tour's going. The job, it's a lot of work. So I always try to treat them with a ton of respect, tip those folks well. But yeah, merch, you got to think about when you get it. Otherwise, you'll be racing to grab your shit in the middle of a set and racing out to an Uber to get home safe. And that's also not fun. So
that's not ideal.
Delicate balance. How do I be a consumer at a metal show with tact? Fucking goddamn capitalism, I tell you. Well, on capitalism, hey, inflation got you down. How can you save some fucking money at a show? I know of a few things I would recommend. The most basic thing, besides having like, if you're of the persuasion to party, of course you could have a heavy metal parking lot and get a little pre-gaming and like file this under the no shit section of what we're telling you. But beyond that, you need to get hydrated throughout the show. So if you're going to get a water bottle and you don't mind, being really thrifty, fucking crush that shit up and put it in your pocket. Get more water later out of the bathroom, provided it's not, one of those bathrooms and nasty as all shit. But I mean, some places, I only suggest doing this, like, honestly, when it's a venue that's in the heart of downtown and they're trying to charge you, like, I don't know, like Woodstock 99 prices on water. Like, I'm not paying $12 for water. Fuck you. If it's a small place, whatever. Of course I'll pay it. But yeah, otherwise, no thanks.
Definitely not. And it's funny you bring that up because at the show yesterday, they were charging like $7 a bottle for a bottle of water. And I was just like, nah.
It's bullshit.
You can really go fuck yourself with an anchor on that one. I'm not paying that. So I just went into the bathroom and then was just kind of, cupping water in my hands and drinking it as
I do not know
along.
if our listening audience is going to get that visual from those sound effects. I'm just telling you, I had a complete different idea of where that story was going for a second there. I know you saw Rammstein. Like,
For the list.
like that shit was erotic as fuck.
For the listening audience out there, I was
Don't believe
cupping
that
my hand.
he was cupping some balls right as he was making all those noises. Supple hands. That's what you need at a show, is supple hands.
Moisturize before you go to the show, God damn it.
And don't be bringing no bullshit of vino. Not some of this bullshit Target lotion. You need to have some good quality boutique level shit for those hands. Well, get side railed by these sound effects. Don't fucking do that. Tip your bartender early and well, because honestly, if you are in a situation where they are not requiring you to buy bottled water and it's going to be a busy show, like they're going to be dealing with so many fucking people throughout the night just asking for water and not paying. It's just the moral of the story is always tip people in the service industry. Tip them well, always. They'll take care
absolutely.
of you. Can I kind of go change gears now from the health and wellness and nuts and bolts? I want to throw something new your way and get your opinion around this.
Yeah, hit me.
Every week, I'm going to try to work something wrestling related into our show. And every wrestling fan specifically knows both the power and the shame of a chant. And heavy metal shows, I love to get a chant going. I don't, whatever it may be, usually 3 words work best. But there is no shame on this life or this realm like having a failed chant. And so I want to throw this out there as part of your toolkit. Think carefully about when, how, and why you start a chant, and try to roll at least with a couple of friends who are on board and ride with you for at least 3 or 4 revolutions, because it sucks when you're like, play one more, or whatever the fuck you're doing. Now I can't think, or, I don't even know. I'm just drawing a blank. But the point is, show us your songs. Like, if you're trying to chant something, have some support, or be mortified for the rest of your life and go dig a hole backside of the venue.
Oh yeah, you're 100% right. The shame that entails a failed chant is something that will literally haunt your bloodline for generations. I mean, your kids' will be talking about how great grandpappy failed a concert chant one time, and it's been haunting them ever since. It is truly mortifying, because after a failed chant, you're just like, I gotta get out of here. You gotta
get
leave.
the fuck out now. You have to pay basic. Though there's only one bottom feeder below a failed chant, and we've all done it. You just don't want to get caught doing it. Like, everyone's kind of doing it. But when you're fucking singing along, don't know a goddamn word, and the chorus changes in a direction you weren't anticipating, and you're loudly getting words wrong, like, or getting the wrong, whatever the chant is, you get that shit wrong, and you're like, you just got to know sometimes, if you don't know the song, just fucking rock out with your body.
And timing for chanting is incredibly important, because
It's everything.
Oh yeah, timing really is everything. The amount of times that you and I have successfully started a chant due to impeccable timing. And that's another thing. So on the one end of the spectrum, failing to start a chant is just unbearable shame. But on the other hand side of the spectrum, successfully starting a chant that spreads through the crowd like wildfire is the greatest feeling on the face of the earth. You feel like a goddamn champion of the people. You feel like a warrior returning home from a long campaign. You feel so alive when you start a chant and you realize you're the one who started it, or you and your group of friends are the ones that started it.
If you feel that passionately, and I love it, wait till I get you to a wrestling show. Nobody chants like wrestling fans. And it's just from the encouraging to, like, you deserve it, to the you fucked up or you sick fuck. I mean, it's just crazy. Yeah. Nobody chants like wrestling crowds, but I agree. If you can get like if you're at an arena show and you get check this out. I saw an AEW show in Minneapolis, and, you know, Minnesotans are so hardcore obsessed with Minnesota. We think it's the greatest place ever. We got to convince ourselves of that because the weather sucks so much ass. But needless to say, seeing an AEW event in Minneapolis, and there were all these chants that were Minnesota specific, and as the night went on, they got more and more tongue-in-cheek and self-serving. So to open the night, it's like 612, which is the area code that most people in Minneapolis have, or 651 for St. Paul. It goes from that to, like, at a certain point, we're like, I actually started this and I got it going, but Kirby Puckett. I got people chanting a 1990s baseball star that no one outside of Minnesota even remembers at this point. But the point is, that shit was hilarious, self-serving, awesome chant work. And I just love a chant. I think you hit the nail on the head, man. But yeah, don't fail in your chants. And if you do, take the dust off. But I would say if you've failed on a chant about 3 times, it's time to consider just being a listener at the show, because people ain't vibing on what you're serving up.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I've got quite the little mini. I've got an extravaganza inside of an extravaganza. We've talked a little bit about archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
We have hinted at archetypes previously. Archetypes being sort of like the characters you see over and over at a metal show, and there's a lot of different ways that you can talk about the archetypes of a show. You know, there's a physical look to some folks that you see repeated, like a bald dude with a goatee. God damn, I'll be damned if that's not 1 out of every 7 metalheads I know. But there's other, I don't really know if these are archetypes I'm talking about or like classes in an RPG, something along those lines. But part of your druidic journey is having awareness over the NPCs and the characters you're going to run across at a metal show, because this wisdom can make or break your shows. Bottom line is, heavy metal shows have a huge continuum. I'm going to just say of biodiversity. It's really a marvel of nature when you get down to it. Just all sorts of humanoids in all various phases of evolution. Now you got on some end, you know, with this evolution, you got those who are maybe knuckle dragon and honestly maybe just recently discovered tools. So that's one end of the continuum. But on the other end, you got more advanced life. People that maybe have PhDs or families or just know how to string a few sentences together without bobbing their head to some imaginary beat. There's a continuum of evolution. So, as a druid of the order, here's what I say to you. You are part anthropologist at shows. You have to study human behavior.
Absolutely.
And if you're not doing that, you are, my friend, you're shoegazing. You got to pick your head up off the floor and pay attention to what's going on around you, because let me give you an example. These are the people I think, and this is based off of 20 plus years of careful field research, I think you're going to come across the most. The first thing I'm going to lead off with, and we have a friend, I'm not going to name him, but he knows who he is. And he's definitely part of this class, but the Cro-Mags. The Cro-Mags are probably what most people who aren't into heavy metal, if I said lay down an archetype of heavy metal, they're gonna come at me with some iteration of the Cro-Mag. Now, you know what these guys look like. Pure energy. They are the berserkers amongst us. They're probably shirtless at some point. Beyond that, I would say they're going to have a higher propensity to be a little boozed up at a show. But if you hang out, you have to be able to spot a Cro-Mag, because know where you stand. If you find yourself next to a gaggle of Cro-Mags right before a band like Slayer is going to go on, damn sure move your ass if you're not ready. Because these are going to be the guys, they are the ones kicking the tires, lighting the fires, and getting the pit going. They will give you +2 fighting ability, I would say, at a show. So that's good. They're very loyal. +2 fighting. They're going to be -1 defense to your stats, though, because they will use their bodies with reckless abandon. They're not concerned with preserving any of their joints. They're not taking glucosamine before the fucking show, okay? These guys are nuts. These gals are nuts. And I'll just say this. If you hang out with them, you're also apt to, over time, feel a little more confusion during a show, because you'll try to keep pace with them. But you got to remember, these guys are the elite Berserkers.
I think that one nails it right on the head, absolutely. And I know exactly who you're talking about in this one. Again, not gonna name drop him, but I know exactly who you're talking about, and he is 100% would be classified as a Cro-Mag.
Tribal Cro-Mag Elder.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing where you stand with these guys is completely true, because they are prone to confusion and stuff, or you can be prone to confusion when around them, because
they're prone to confusion too.
Yeah, that too. But I mean, they're just flying off instinct half the time. You know, like you said, they have a high propensity to get boozed up, so they are literally flying off of like sheer uncontrolled instinct and emotion. So you never know which way they're gonna go. Are they zigging? Are they zagging? Are they throwing an elbow? Are they coming in with a drop kick or whatever? You know what I mean? You never can tell with these guys.
They're just sheer energy. You have to know that every show needs some Cro-Mags. The thing about all these classes. Now, you as a druid, you are one of the knowledge. You are a seeker of truth, of esoteric wisdom. So you, at times, can value all of these classes, but you have to know the ratio, and you have to know what the right amount is. So if you have a group of Cro-Mags, you might want to think about adding one of the next class, which is the Philosophers. Now, the Philosophers, these are your great conversationalists at shows. You might not know them, you might never run across them before, but in between sets, you're sitting there having a beer, and some person from across the way spots your shirt. Next thing you know, they're coming over there, and you're exchanging all sorts of wisdom about heavy metal, talking bands you love. They're talking about the philosophy behind the music. This is 100% a nod to the Chuck Schuldiners of heavy metal, thinking about the music, not just listening to it. Devin Townsend is another, I think, in that sort of philosopher class, who are the sum is indeed greater than all the parts with these folks. The Philosophers, I would say this: now here's the thing, the Philosophers will give you +2 knowledge on a concert.
Absolutely.
But you surround yourself with philosophers, you might as well be going to a classical show, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're trying to have a great time at a heavy metal show, you got to have a blend of those Cro-Mags and philosophers. What do you say?
I couldn't agree with that more. And the thing with the Philosophers is it could go +2 knowledge, or it could go -2 knowledge, because if you get a big group of philosophers, then you might start having the quintessential actually battles. And we all know, we've been in conversations where people start interjecting with the actually. That's just the worst. That is absolutely the worst. So I could say it could go either way, either +2 knowledge or -2 knowledge on that front.
I think I know what you're saying. Sometimes philosophers get out of balance and become gatekeepers if they're not careful. That is a different tricky class that I'm glad you're bringing up.
Yeah, those are the philosophers that have fallen into the dark order of things, and try not to become one of those guys.
Sometimes protecting the sanctity of heavy metal becomes a religiosity, and if you're not careful, that philosopher in you will become a gatekeeper, which we never want. You can come up to me with the 5-finger death punch backpatch, and I'm going to still treat you as an equal, even though I'm going to also struggle with this inner gatekeeper in me that's like, ah. But who amongst us? Well, this next archetype is tricky. This slow-moving, monolithic, subterranean creatures that are unsure of the light. These people are those of the must, is what I call them, because most of these that I would define as those of the must live in basements. They are, the only light they're seeing is the illumination of their huge LCD monitors playing, I don't want to call any game out, but you know the one I'm thinking. Pizza rolls and crystal clear Pepsi and every single Nile album from start to finish all day long. Death metal fans almost always are going to fill out this class. You don't see a lot of black metal fans that are keepers of the must, because they still like to walk in the woods and catch a little sunlight once in a while. They still like nature. But if you're a keeper of the must, you're committed to the bit. You're washing your shirts and you're hanging them in the rafters for weeks on end until they've got that perfect quotient of pizza roll stink with basement mildew. And I can spot these guys a mile away. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, why would I need to know where these those of the must. Why do I need to know where they lurk? Well, because the bottom line is this. If you hang out with them, they're going to give you a lot of inside information about how Taco Bell's menu has changed, what the best fantasy novels are to read, what's going on with Game of Thrones, and why it finished so terribly. So they have all this geeky nerddom fanfare that they can give you that on the surface may not seem valuable, but at some point on a trivia night about, I don't know, 1980s Tolkien-inspired fantasy novels, you'll all of a sudden be glad that maybe you spent more than 90 seconds talking to one of these keepers.
I feel like it's also important to know how to identify these folks, too, because as the name implies, those of the must, they have an odor, and they are not afraid to just bask in that odor. They probably have gone nose blind by that point, but knowing how to identify them can help reduce the assault on your senses by a good portion.
You don't want to be exposed to black mold, bottom line. And if you're hanging around these dudes, those spores are going to get in deep. I can't agree more. This is the only archetype that you don't need eyes to know when you're around them. And that might be surprising considering the festivities that the Cro-Mags get up to. But those of the must, you could smell them a mile away. So keep an eye out for those of the must. Again, great geeky wisdom, horrible smells. They cook a mean, air-fried pizza roll. So I'll say that about them. And I don't know how they get the crystal clear Pepsi. I don't know how. They live in a basement. There's probably a fucking pallet of it in the basement. Don't ask me these questions, okay?
A stockpile of crystal Pepsi.
A stockpile. For God's sake. Well, let's talk about what I would say is maybe the most noble of the class, the King's Guard, as it were. I'm talking about the Keepers of the Faith. Now, these are the lifers of heavy metal. I would say of all the archetypes I've seen up here, and I've at times probably exemplified certain categories in one way or another, Keepers of the Faith is what I think as a druid, you're taking that path towards becoming, and this is someone who is committed to heavy metal. These are the guys and gals that are talking about seeing Saxon in 1982. They are often the ones who will throw a hand around a younger fan and buy them a beer. They will let you know about all the fun they've had throughout the years and why they were so happy that you're at the show. Just a general good vibe from these folks. And you know a Keeper of the Faith because, honestly, usually they're old as fuck. I'm on my way to that, but you don't get to be 50 at a heavy metal show on a whim. It's not something that happens. If you're in that spot, you've been doing this for a while. This is not the first show you've been to, and I have utmost respect for the Keepers of the Faith.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, I kind of regard you as a keeper of the faith, just because you have such a vast depth of knowledge when it comes to metal music, and you've taught me a lot. And like you said, you feel like you're on the way to being a full-fledged keeper of the faith, and I could 100% agree with that. If I had to slot you into one of these archetypes of metal, it would be a keeper of the faith. Absolutely. Well,
I appreciate you, and certainly before I do my own self-sucking here, I will just say, we don't know a lot about Druids at this point. There's not a lot known. Most of what we know about Druids comes by way of their enemies. The Romans wrote about the Druids. The Greeks wrote about the Druids, but they were an oral tradition. We don't really know that much about them beyond what was written by those scant, short transcriptions from their enemies. But that being said, from what we do know, they spent upwards of 20 years steeping themselves in their craft. So that's why I say these Keepers of the Faith, yeah, it's a long journey. But all bottom line is heavy metal has had its ups and downs as a business. And what has kept it alive are these fans that do have that sort of religiosity to it. That hopefully that doesn't come with gatekeeping. But bottom line is people that have stuck by the genre through thick and thin. And yeah, when metal gets in your blood, we talked about this in our last episode, but when it gets in your blood, you're infected and you're on your way to being at least one of these. They're not, these are just, Jane Goodall can only do so much in the 2 decades she spent in the forest. This is what I have amassed so far. There are other subsets that you can observe. We've got your black metal legion who occasionally surface at a show like Halder with the corpse paint. You've got your metal dads who I always get a kick out of, who are so plainly there for their one show of the year. What are some bands that bring out the metal dads?
Rammstein. I'm not.
Oh,
I
no
actually
shit.
have. I have a quick story about that. So, before we snuck out into the ground, out in the pits, we go to our seats, and there is this older woman sitting next to us, and she looks like a total, like, just regular run of the mill, like almost like a church mom type deal. You know, a short haircut, very conservative dress. There's no band T-shirts, no nothing or whatever. And I started bringing up started a conversation with her. She's a 64-year-old lifelong Rammstein fan. You know, she was like 35 years old when Herzeleid came out, which is their first like studio album. And she got her sons into metal music, and they're like 30 or something like that. I just thought, and I would have never guessed that this woman would have been a metal fan. Not only is she a Rammstein fan, but she was telling me about some of the other bands that she's been to and seen. She's seen like Iron Maiden like 12 times or something like that. Like, she is a true blue metal fan. And
Keeper of the faith right there.
Absolutely. And it's just, if there's the one like dad concert or like the dad concert goer, like she would be in that. She would be a mom of the concert or whatever.
There you go. Well, those are my archetypes for now. I would imagine this is going to be a revolving topic throughout our show, because as we are anthropologists, as burgeoning druids, you must be paying attention to human behavior. That is, I mean, that's fundamentally why we're going to shows. It's a quintessential human experience to go to a concert. Music is a quintessential expression of our inner humanity. So all that, this bullshitting aside, people are interesting. Heavy metal is such an expression of our own humanity. So I love thinking about the way people interact with each other at shows. So,
quick question.
Yeah.
So I slotted you in as a keeper of the faith, or an acolyte on the path to becoming a keeper of the faith. Where would you slot me into one of these things? I'm curious what you think.
100% keeper of the faith. I mean, you're on that track. You're as diehard. You have gone so hard into metal so fast that there can be no question. That's what I said. That's why I think of this as a blood disease. Once it gets in you, you're fucking infected, and there ain't no Moderna. I don't got time for you because you ain't gonna boost the shit out of my system. I'll tell you that right now. So, we were talking about dads at shows, and I don't even know if this is gonna land. This is sort of like, don't fucking start a chant unless you know you've got some timing. Like, you gotta have some timing to do this. But every once in a while, when I'm feeling cheeky and the setting is right, I like to insert some one-liners between songs for a band who I know is gonna get a kick out of it. One of the key bands I've loved to do this for is Obituary. And if you ever decide to do this, my advice would be, you got to do 100% dad jokes that get worse and worse between songs. And it's so funny to see like the band, like, is this motherfucker cutting jokes between our songs? And you slowly win them over. So like Obituary, I like to take their song titles and just turn them on the head. So for example, between a song when it's all goddamn quiet, the crowd is just like leveled off after rocking out and they're waiting to see what comes on next. The band's sucking on some water or some beer, getting their breath, and I'm like a sock in the dryer, I'm turned inside out. Did someone turn on the Weather Channel? Because I see threatening skies. And you just keep these coming. I know, terrible. Believe me, these are terrible. But in a live setting, people are like, oh, people start to groan and the band starts to crack up. My favorite was, I like my Caesar raps like I like my death metal, chopped in half. Yeah. It's like get this fucking guy out of here. So I don't know if that's actually going to land in this sort of setting. It might be one of those things where you have to be there. But if you've got the balls to start a chant and you're not afraid to fail, you want to turn it up a couple obnoxious knots. Try to do some dad jokes in between songs. I don't even know if that's good advice, but you could try it and report. Send us an email if you do. Let us know what you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know. I do want to interject with inserting the one-liners. I do remember when we went to that Undeath concert, and it was like it was before their new album came out, and it was again middle of the winter, and I think it was right around Christmas time. It was like either right after they came, right before they came on, like when they were getting everything ready on the stage, or it was like after their first song, and you just come out of nowhere, 'tis the season for some legions, yeah! And like everybody around us just started cracking the fuck up, and then the lead singer of the band looked over and pointed at you. I was just like, oh my god, this is so fucking funny, dude.
Hell yeah. When they hit, they hit. Give them a shot. I guess, before we launch into album reviews, I want to hear if you have anything else to add. The one thing else I'll add for now, for this, to close out this extravaganza, is when you know how to get to and fro from your car, practice good common sense, travel with a group if you can, always be smart, and that's what I've got. Anything you else have on the survival guide for concerts?
Yeah, like you said, if you're going with a group, it's good to go with a group. Not only does it add to fun and enjoyment of the experience, but also when you go with a group of friends, make sure you add set some rally points. If you guys get split up, like, hey, let's meet here, whatever. And then I believe we briefly touched on this, but pace yourself. For the love of God, pace yourself. I know it's hard, and we regularly fail in doing so, but pacing yourself and not blowing your wad for the first or second band, and then by the time the headliner comes around, you just have zero energy. It kind of stinks. So try to do your best to pace yourself. But other than that, that's all I really got. We had a lot of overlapping stuff with the Survival Guide 101 to concert going.
Well, I'll be looking forward to giving reports in future concerts about those of the must, philosophers, archetypes, wet farts, all of it. So with that being said, I think we'll close out that extravaganza, and let's close our show down with a couple of short reviews. What are we listening to? I'll go ahead and just open with a theme that I've been continuing since we started this show, which is, let me tell you about the doomy, dirgy death metal I've been listening to. So I'm going to bring to you a band out of Florida, which right off the bat, if you're from Florida, you've got a place in my heart. How could you not if you're a death metal fan? Worm is the band. Foreverglade is the album. 2021, put out by 20 Buck Spin. My God, 20 Buck Spin. I'll shut up. I won't gush anymore. But these guys, I love this. I went to take a look at their names. I always want to give credit. I guess they started off as kind of a black metal band, which I haven't listened to, but based on these names of Phantom Slaughter and Roth Septentrion, Septentrion, fuck. Anyway, I mean, like, I thought I might find a Tyler or a Jim or something. So if you have those sorts of monikers, this is some shit to get into, sink your teeth into. But what the fuck do they sound like? Well, super dirgy funeral death metal. It's another one of these swampy-ass albums with just an alligator closing its maws over a half-decayed corpse once again. This band, if I had to describe their sound, it's just a slow, churning sort of pace. It's much more on the atmosphere side. This is a heavy death metal atmosphere, much less about technicality. It's not... Well, I'm going to go ahead and contradict myself in a second, but overall, this is an atmospheric experience. You won't be able to pick out specific spots after you listen to it easily. You'll just have a feeling that it brings along with you. So that feeling would be like a Louisiana hurricane sweeping into an 1850s mausoleum and washing the corpses out to sea. Something like that. Slimy, oozy, fetid water. This album, though, it's like okay, look, full disclosure. I have never done cocaine or heroin, but if I had, as far as I can tell, this album is a speedball. It's part cocaine, part heroin. Why do I say that? Well, I've already mentioned the slow churning pace. The songs all are very slow, but every once in a while, and I've never really heard a band do this, they will come over the top with just shredding, like arpeggio-laden hell, like Yngwie Malmsteen type of shredding over this slow, plodding funeral death doom. So that's why I say this album sounds like a fucking speedball. It's part cocaine and part heroin. If you get a chance, I'll just tell you this right now. At times, it's so heavy and it's so slow that it dissolved my sciatic nerve into my body. And I was left a quivering mess, huddled in my own pool of fluids. I give this album absolutely a solid 4 out of 5 slipped discs from the Neckwrecker. Worm, Foreverglade, check it the fuck out.
I will definitely check that out. That sounds amazing. And that is going to go on my punch list tunes right after the show. Well, let me tell you a little bit what I've been listening to. You know, as we've talked about in the past, I'm kind of on this journey of tech death. I want to learn a lot about tech death, how it got started, where it got started, what are some of the bands that influenced tech death. And one of those bands from the Netherlands is Pestilence.
Oh.
So I've been listening to some Pestilence. The album that I've been really cranking out to is Testimony of the Ancients. Came out in 1991. And this has some like real like death and like thrash metal vibes to it. It's getting closer to tech death. I can definitely tell that this is like one of the bands that like kind of influence and shape modern tech death, or what we view as modern tech death. Twisted Truth, an album or a song off that album, just fucking crushes. It's kind of slower. It's more melodic, I would say, at times. The melodies and the solos in that song are just amazing. They're so good, and the guitar just like makes it tickles your insides. Like it evokes a lot of different emotions when I listen to it. The organs in the background of some of the tracks makes you feel like you're at an evil ceremony. Some dark priest is at the head of like a skull and bone ridden altar, like performing like an evil seance or something like that. It just kind of invokes those kind of emotions and feelings. Again, like I said, the guitars are just absolutely shredding and at times are incredibly technical, which is again why I feel that this band has helped shape what we view as tech death. And then just skull crushing and brooding ass drums just really kind of just pound into your chest, and the whole album is fantastic. If you haven't heard of it, if you haven't heard of Pestilence, or if you haven't listened to that album, or if you just haven't listened to it a long time, definitely would recommend it. Definitely check it out. Testimony of the Ancients by Pestilence.
God damn, you just know the way to a guy's heart. Last week you talked about Nocturnus, the key, and I was already smitten with you. And I'm like, this kid's got it. And now you're coming back at me a week later with Pestilence, Consuming Impulse, and Testimony of the Ancients. I don't even remember all the titles of their albums, but I love Pestilence. You nailed it on the head. Like, they're a band they don't sound like Bolt Thrower, but they make me feel like Bolt Thrower too, with these mammoth riffs that just get you fucking headbanging. That early, like that run they were on from the late 80s, early 90s, it's just untouchable. Some of the first records I bought when I was getting into vinyl, Pestilence. I'm just so tickled once again that that's what you're listening to. What a fucking fantastic band to discover. Death metal is just such a deep genre.
It really is. It really, really is. So what else you been listening to, big guy?
You know what? You just had me on the edge of my seat with what you said about something about the Pestilence album was giving you feelings of a ceremony. Well, let me tell you right now that if you want some music that sounds like rituals and ceremonies, primal experiences, let me talk to you about Carl Sanders' music. Now, I'm sure our listening audience, probably a death metal contingent for the most part. I'm biased. But Carl Sanders, as you know, is of Nile fame, the mastermind behind Nile. And he's always infused his work in Nile with a lot of Egyptian influence, a lot of Eastern melodies, you know, a lot of like people screaming and chanting in the background and do chaka chaka do chaka. Just like these like wailing noises that transport you to a different time. And on this album that he's put out under his own name, Saurian Apocalypse, you get exactly that. These Egyptian soundscapes with these crazy vocals where, you know, they're probably singing in like some sort of dead Aramaic language that was recovered from some scroll inside of a piece of pottery from the Copper Age. These songs just give you feelings like you stumbled upon a ceremony that you weren't meant to see, that you were instantly taken by, and that you might lose your sanity for. Carl Sanders has done something really unique on this album. This is not heavy metal, but this is absolutely heavy metal adjacent. And it's one of these albums that I try to tell people that, look, when I in the past when I've been in we'll say discussions around what quantifies a band to be considered heavy metal versus not, I always reach this sticking point with people to try to help them understand that you can be heavy without being heavy metal. And this is one of those sorts of listening experiences, heavy as a black hole. If you have ever listened to their album, The Catacombs of Nephren Ka, there is a track on that album when I first heard it. It's midway through the album. I wish I knew the name, but it's just like a do. Like you, it's just very much like a bunch of people around a fire sort of feel. Some sort of sacrifice is happening. And when I heard that, it wasn't a death metal song, but I'm like, I want just a whole album of this in my life. Well, this is the album for you. Sorry and Apocalypse is his most recent release, but everything Karl Sanders has put out under his own name follows this sort of Egyptian storytelling, this Near East, this Mesopotamian, this Sumerian storytelling.
Hell yeah.
Here's the bottom line, Franny. We don't fucking know what music that old would sound like. When people try to make new music that sounds like, say, the Vikings. Well, yeah, we know mouth harps were around. We know there is going to be vocalization, but we're still guessing. And though it's probably true that we're just guessing here about what old Mesopotamian or Sumerian music would sound like in ritual, I think Karl Sanders has done a fucking really good job. And it makes me honestly wonder if there is some sort of intuition that we have, some sort of connection we've got to past lives, because I'll be God damned if I don't hear this and feel like I'm literally embalming a pharaoh for the underworld, or I'm watching people practicing dying, letting their souls leave their body or astral project. You talk about druidic music, Sorry and Apocalypse is for you. Check it out, whether you're playing a board game or trying to set the scene for a horror book. It's a must listen. I can't tell you it gave me any kind of slip discs. It didn't. It astral projected my ass 3,000 years is what it did. I loved it. Loved every second of it.
Hell yeah. Wow. I'm definitely going to have to check that out, man. That sounds amazing, and that sounds like something I definitely want to experience for myself. Good God. Oh my God. That gave me chills, dude. Holy shit.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Okay.
Like an unearthed tomb being cracked open by a pillaging grave robber. That chilled air hit your bones and turned your flesh to goose.
I don't want to be that grave robber. Holy shit.
Fucking A. You want to be until you lose your very soul, my good man.
Okay. All right. Oh, I think I got time for one more album that
Give
I've
us
been
one
listening
more.
To. So there's this band called Kataklysm from the United States. Tempe, Arizona, I believe, is where they're from. Now, I recently just asked you if you've heard of these guys. Did you get a chance to check them out at all?
Not yet. They're on the backlog, awaiting to be satiated.
Okay. All right. Well, the album is Liminal Right. Came out in 2022 this year. Now, when I pick up from it, it's kind of like a doomy, atmospheric type of album, I would say. There are some like, up-tempo, like death, not Death the Band, but like death metal elements to it as well. But I get a lot of feelings of Rivers of Nile when I'm listening to these guys. It makes me feel like I'm listening to a Rivers of Nile album. But it also kind of, for some odd reason, I don't know why, but it makes me also think of Borknagar. Because there are some times where, like, over the backdrop of like a beautiful, like, atmospheric, slower tempo soundscape, where the lead singer will come in with just these really nice, clean vocals, almost operatic vocals, but not really operatic, for lack of a better term. So that's why it kind of makes me feel like Borknagar, and it's just, I was really, really pleasantly surprised with this album. They have other albums, but this was my first taste of this band called Kardashev. And I definitely am going to go back and check out their other stuff after hearing this. If I had to put a rating on it, I would give it 4 Franny packs out of 5. I was definitely pleasantly surprised with it. Like I said, if you're into atmospheric, expansive soundscapes with little doomy elements, with also some up-tempo, like death, borderline thrash tones as well. Definitely check it out. Liminal Right came out this year, 2022. Kardashev.
Well, I think, what else can be said? I think the sun god Ra would be pleased at my picks, and I think the river of Styx will be pleased with yours. So as above, so below, young druids. That's all I have been listening to of late. And it's great to check in with you, Franny. Do you have anything else for today's episode?
Nope, that's all I got as well.
Well, acolytes, keep listening, keep the faith, grow the faith, beware of the must, get crystal clear Pepsi, all of that shit, and a bag of chips. But until next time, I am Neckwrecker, and with me, as always, is Franny, and thanks for listening. Take us away, Franny.
All right. Well, like he said, thank you for joining us on this episode of Druids of Doom. Check us out next time where we talk about another thing. Don't know what it's going to be yet. But make sure you follow us on our socials. We got socials now. We're on Instagram. We're on the Twitter, Druids of Doom. You can check us out there. Also, Druids of Doom podcast at gmail.com if you have questions, or if you just want to let us know what you're listening to, or let us know how bad we're sucking. As always, make sure you join us for the next episode of Druids of Doom.